What would I have done differently with Star Wars Rebels? Like, how might I have changed some of the plot details around, or really anything? So, first of all, with the characters, I would probably have made Kanan Jarrus into someone else. So, what I mean by that is instead of creating a totally new character called Caleb Doom, I would have actually used a pre-existing character. So if you remember in the Ahsoka Younglings arc in the Clone Wars, where she's helping them create their lightsabers, and then they run into Hondo and everything. Um, so I would have actually used one of the younglings from that arc and made him into the character of Kanan Jarrus, and I'm specifically referring to um, the human named Petro, who was the guy with the green lightsaber with the black hair and everything. He was the only human in that group, so I would have made him the main character of Star Wars Rebels. Like I would have put him in place of Kanan Jarrus, or actually, now that I think about it, I might have just used one of the other characters. Let's see. Yeah, let me think through this a little bit. Yeah, so maybe I might have used the. Maybe I might have used the Rhodian, so maybe I would have used the Rhodian or maybe the Wookiee. Yeah. So yeah, I would have just used one of the younglings from the Ahsoka and the Younglings arc as the main character in Star Wars Rebels instead of using a totally new character. And I like the character of Kanan Jarrus, Caleb Doom, but I would have just wanted more connections in that area. And instead of having his master be Depa Bilaba, I might have chosen someone we don't know, haven't really heard of as much. Like, for instance, we could have used Coleman Kaj instead. They could have. So I would have had the character of Kanan Jarrus be one of the younglings from the Ahsoka arc, and that character would have been a Padawan to Coleman Kaj or someone like that. Now, let's move on. Secondly, I would have had Ahsoka run into more of the characters. So I would have had Ahsoka run into Tarkin again, and that would have been very interesting because the last time they met, that was at Ahsoka's trial, and Tarkin was so eager to have Ahsoka done away with. So I don't think she would be happy to see him again, and he would be shocked to see her again. So I would have had a reunion with Ahsoka and Tarkin, Ahsoka and Hondo, Ahsoka and Bo-Katan, Ahsoka and Saw Gerrera. That would have been interesting as well. So all those reunions should have happened, and I would have had Captain Rex run into Bo-Katan again, and I would have had Bo-Katan somehow run into Obi-Wan Kenobi again. That would have been difficult, but I would have tried to do that, and I would certainly have had Hondo Onaka meet up with Obi-Wan again, just to know that he's still around, and that would have been nice. And secondly, the character of Ezra Bridger, I did like that character, but I would probably have had him played by maybe an alien instead of non-alien. So actually, I think I would have made Kanan Jarrus into the Rhodian from the Youngling arc or one of the others, and Ezra. Okay, and then season one. Okay, season one was a little slow, but there's honestly not a whole lot I would have changed in season one. Now season two gets a little interesting. Yes. So yeah, I would probably have had a Hondo Ahsoka encounter, or Ahsoka. I'm not sure when I would have gotten rid of Ahsoka, but I would have gotten rid of her. So maybe I would have had her last until season three, and she could have participated in the Mandalore Siege in Star Wars Rebels, and reunited with Bo-Katan and Ursa Wren and all of that. Or maybe I would have just. I think the best way to do it would have been to end her story at the season 2 finale. So what I would have done is I would have had the episode go mostly the same way that it did. So Darth Maul takes out all the Inquisitors, and uh, Kanan and Ezra and Ahsoka are making it, and then what I might have done would have been to have Darth Maul actually kill Kanan in that scene, and then maybe I would have let Ahsoka go, and she would have been the one to train Ezra from there on. Not really sure, but then maybe I would have had Kanan killed and Ahsoka killed. So Ahsoka fights Darth Maul, but then there's a big lightning blast from the tower, and Maul falls, but then he escapes, and Ahsoka manages to get back up, and she fights Vader, and she's already been injured by Maul, and Vader does away with Ahsoka, and Ezra escapes all by himself, and he ends up, and Book 3 gets really interesting. I mean, sorry, season 3 gets really interesting with that, with Ezra being alone and not having anyone to train him. I think that would have been a great struggle for Ezra to have to overcome, of course. And alternatively, I could have done a Dark Disciple style thing where I would have had Maul kill Ezra and Vader kills Ahsoka, or maybe just Maul kills Ahsoka, and Maul and Ezra escape together. And it's sort of like the Dark Disciple situation with Quinlan Vos and Asajj Ventress, where Ezra and Maul are training together, and Maul is trying to use Ezra to destroy Darth Sidious. And so perhaps what would happen then is that Maul and Ezra would eventually make their way to Coruscant, and they would fight Sidious and maybe even Vader together, or they would just fight Sidious, and then eventually Sidious would overcome them, obviously, but maybe Maul would sacrifice himself to save Ezra, and then Ezra runs away back to the rebels, and well, he buries Maul on Dathomir, and then Ezra goes back to the rebels, and the series continues on because Ezra would turn back away from the dark side, or alternatively, Ezra dies at the hands of Sidious, and Maul actually does have the chance to take out Sidious because he lets all his rage go, but then he decides not to, and then he runs away, and yeah, so maybe I would have had that instead, where Ezra dies, but Maul lives, and he chooses not to pursue Sidious anymore, and then he goes to Tatooine, meets Obi-Wan, forgives Obi-Wan, and then goes away, and maybe his ending would have been left ambiguous. So the other thing is, I wouldn't have killed Maul. So let's say I had season 3 going the same way that it did in the regular timeline. I probably wouldn't have brought Maul into season 3. I think I would have just had him escape in season 2 and just been done with Maul for the moment, and then maybe I would have brought him in a future story, and maybe then he could have been in The Mandalorian, or even The Rise of Skywalker, who knows? Yeah, so I would have, but if I had brought Maul into season 3, I would have had the episode where he meets up with Obi-Wan, but instead of attacking Obi-Wan, they talk it through and they manage to forgive each other, and Maul just goes away, and he's sort of a good guy, sort of changed, and he has a brighter future ahead, whatever the case is. And speaking of dark side characters, I would have. I made an earlier video about Dark Disciple where I said I probably wouldn't have killed off Asajj Ventress. I don't know if that's exactly what I said, but what I did say was I wish they hadn't killed off Asajj Ventress. So I would have brought in Asajj Ventress into Star Wars Rebels. Okay, that would mean that she wouldn't have died in the Dark Disciple, but I'm going to make that change in my head, and then I would have brought in Asajj Ventress and had her work with Ahsoka a little bit, and that would have been very interesting. Maybe Asajj Ventress helps, or maybe what happens maybe what I would do is I would, let's say Asajj Ventress survived at the end of Dark Disciple and it was Quinlan Voss who died instead of her, so Asajj Ventress still turns to the light side. And so what I would do is I would have Maul kill Kanan in season 2, and Vader kills Ahsoka in season 2. And then Ezra is all alone without a master, but then the rebels run into Asajj Ventress, and Ventress trains Ezra. And then, of course, Ventress has the run-in with Thrawn and all of that, and eventually, maybe Ventress dies at the end of Rebels, or maybe Ezra dies, or maybe who knows. But yeah, I think it would have been interesting to have seen Ventress train Ezra, or maybe Barriss Offee shows up or I would have had Barriss Offee show up as an Inquisitor, and then she would fight Ahsoka, and then maybe Ahsoka would have to take her down, or maybe Barriss would take her down and give her to Vader. Whatever the case is, or I would also have liked to have seen Vader be able to capture Ahsoka and bring her to, and then Tarkin and Darth Sidious, and then Darth Sidious would have dealt with Ahsoka, and maybe who knows? There were so many lost opportunities and better ways to do things in Star Wars Rebels. And Lux Bonteri could have been brought in as a character as well because they brought in Saw Gerrera, so why not Lux Bonteri? And perhaps I'm just trying to think because there were many things that happened in Star Wars Rebels, and many they brought in literally everything and made all these connections. Yes, so the main things are Ahsoka would have, in my, if I had made Star Wars Rebels, Ahsoka would have died, Maul would have lived, and I would have changed many of the characters and plot points around. And I might have let Gar Saxon live as well, and maybe Gar Saxon would have had another run-in with Maul, and that would have been interesting. Or maybe Maul would have been in that episode, in those episodes with Mandalore, and so maybe Bo-Katan and Clan Bran and Clan Kryze and all of the others uh, fight against the Saxons, but then Maul shows up and takes Gar Saxon's side, and um, he leads the Mandalorians that used to follow him at one point, and then there's a huge battle, and the Empire intervenes, and then the whole planet of Mandalore just gets decimated. And then, of course, everyone has to go away, so the rebels escape, and then Bo-Katan and her Mandalorians are off to fend for themselves, and then Maul and Gar Saxon and all the others, they all escape, and then they go back to Crimson Dawn, and they stay in the shadows for a while, and then they reappear in Star Wars in the Mandalorian, and they fight Din Djarin, and then Maul takes baby Yoda and Grogu, and yeah. So like I'm saying, I'm going on a rant here, but the point is, there are so many things that could have happened. Now, just as a bonus, actually, I guess I'll cover this in a different video that I will do. Actually, no, I'll just talk about it here. Speaking of Ventress and Ahsoka, what also would have been cool is if, for the Siege of Mandalore, maybe this would have made it more interesting, and maybe it could have been a little longer in this case. Barriss Offee escapes from a Republic prison and ends up with Darth Maul, and Darth Maul is training her as his new apprentice. And then Ahsoka actually teams up with Ventress, and Ventress and Ahsoka go to the Siege of Mandalore, and they fight through all the clones, and then Ahsoka manages to take down Barriss Offee. And Ahsoka and Ventress fight Darth Maul, and Darth Maul maybe manages to take out Ventress, but then he makes Ahsoka join her, or he takes out Ahsoka and then Ventress joins her, or Ventress joins him, excuse me. So maybe Maul destroys Ahsoka and has Ventress join him, or he destroys Ventress and has Ahsoka join him, or he takes out both of them, or they both join him, or all chaos breaks loose, but that would have been an interesting arc as well. Yes, there's just so much to think about here. And speaking of Star Wars, the Clone Wars, I would probably have had more arcs centered on Jedi that we don't see as much. So instead of having so many episodes focused on Ahsoka, Anakin, Obi-Wan, and those Padme and those people, I would have had episodes centered on Mon Mothma, more episodes centered on Asajj Ventress, some more stuff with Darth Maul, much more stuff with Mace Windu, and a lot of stuff with Upper Ramses Shaak Ti. I would have taken her off of Camino and had her go on different missions as well. Coleman Kaj, really all these Jedi. There are so many great characters in Star Wars: The Clone Wars, and Evan Peel. I probably wouldn't have killed him off either. There are so many great Jedi characters that it's really a shame that they didn't take the time to use them more. I think that's just a big failing on the part of the creators. They really should have taken more advantage of all the characters that they had, and they didn't. But those are some of the things that I would change.